to make sure that we
Ah,
were up and going and making sure that we were going live. And so, thank you so much. Sana will be leading us out in an amazing discussion today, talking about making good decisions. I am Brittany Campbell-Turner, CEO and founder of Constructor, leader of the PropTech Group, and excited to carry out these discussions around lean construction or just lean methodologies, like Sana just mentioned, that are applicable in any state, in any scenario where you have a process and you have to execute with people and collaborate closely with them. Really excited for this discussion. And with that, I'll hand it off to Marcus.
Hi, my name is Marcus Turner. I am the other half of Constructor. My main focus is on shared risk, shared reward contracting models and how to accelerate more collaboration within the construction space. I worked in nuclear power where we shared a lot of information, usually upfront, uh, and I realized the benefits of that. And being a part of Constructor, I started to realize that we could bring some of those things into construction. So I started exploring different ways to be able to do that. Um, right now, one of the ways that I'm looking to be able to do that is utilizing blockchain um, with um, agreements and payments.
okay. So I invited Hussein and Stephanie as well up here. So let's just go around. So Hussein, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. This is Hussein. I'm project engineer, construction. I'm uh, very enthusiastic about lean construction. I have a CM Lean and a Master's Construction Management. And good morning, all.
Good morning. And Stephanie, welcome as well. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, really quickly. Thank you very much, Tan. I appreciate it. It was also good to know more about yourself. So you'll shine your lights on us this morning in terms of leading this group. What I do is I help assess businesses so they're making the right software purchases for their business. I have a specialty in construction as well as manufacturing and financial services. And so that's what I'm doing. I've got my own company, Intelligent Construction Opportunities, which helps to facilitate this particular journey. So that's
Welcome.
me.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
welcome. Yeah, no, manufacturing, right? We already have something in common, so that's great. So today, I really thought, what should we talk about? Because we've been on different topics, still around lean construction and just lean thinking. Um, and I thought, let's talk about making good business decisions because that's just a critical part of our jobs. And it's also really vital to every company to have it. And a lean decision can actually help you optimize your decision by spending the right amount of time
Can you invite
um,
people?
about around the effort. And it can actually help you as
I
well.
have one
If you have the
watcher.
right process on how to make your decisions to get there, you can eliminate waste in that decision process. And that helps that you can actually make decisions much faster and then you can increase your success rate. And when I thought about it again, because I had to prepare for today, right? I was like, okay, that sometimes if you think about decisions, sometimes you don't need them to be made, right? It's just because it's there and it's just you really need to rethink it. And sometimes it's okay to have them late and sometimes you actually have to make a decision now. Sometimes you have a decisions that's where you're saying, I need more information. But you also have to be true to yourself that the more you know, um, the better decision you can make. But at a certain point, you can't wait too long as well, right? What is that balance and what does that look like? So there's so much on what do you do. Do you go with your gut sometimes, or do you actually wait and saying no, we need to have more data? And if you look around, I think just in the last couple of years a lot of companies has gone to be much more data driven, which is good, which is healthy. but I also see that you can collect too much data and get lost, and then how do you then make a decision? Um, but if you go back and say how, what does this look like, you can always compare it to yourself and saying a decision follows a pattern. So if you bought a car or if you're buying a house, I think we can all relate to that. um, there is a pattern that give us some guidelines for how to make our decision. If it's a car, right, we know what we're looking for. um, we know we need some information, and then we can come to the outcome. So there's always a goal that's identified when we have these decision patterns. So I will really love to hear, from everybody up here, what they're seeing, and what is the roadblock they have experience with, in a specific case where they had to make a tough decision. So yeah, Brittany, what do you want? Do you have anything to add?
I just love the topic so much. Going through the pandemic and trying to make decisions about how we're going to go back, how we're going to roll out policies. In the event that we go back, I mean, we had maybe as an organization, and I wasn't part of all of the decision making. I'm clearly not the leaders of the organization in any way, shape, or form. The where I'm employed, but I was aware of some of the conversations that were happening because people I work closely with, they have been part of that decision making process. But I think it was just so interesting because there was a lot of indecision, and everybody wanted to be safe. They wanted to do the right thing, but they also wanted to keep employees excited. And, we had, I don't know, three different dates that we were going to return. And then we decided there was not going to be a date determined. And it was just really, really interesting to see such a large organization that is used to making very confident decisions be so indecisive. Um, so I really thought that was interesting. And I think very many organizations went through just that. It's not, I mean, we were not alone. And it's really quite interesting. The other thing that I think about when you're talking about this is actually a prior client of mine, when I was working as an owner's representative consultant for construction projects, we were building out a medical office building, 5,000 square feet, medical office building for doctors who had never built anything prior. Maybe one of them had built their home, um, and it was really interesting to work with them. Prior to working with them, I had worked with, facilities management departments, or, companies where there's at least one person within their organization that has, some background on what that process looks like to make decisions internally to that organization. Normally there's some process of specific dollar amounts and it needs to go to this person, to that person. However, with these two individuals, they were business partners for maybe 10 years, had, been leasing a location for a very long time. And, well, I say for pretty much the entire time that they were working together. And, uh, one was very aloof about things. And then the other one was, um, I don't know, kind of just wanted to get done. Like, just get the project done. Like, I don't really care what it like what it takes, like whatever you need from me, I'll help you. And it was just very interesting to navigate how to drive recommendations for individuals who have such different personalities and lack of understanding of how a construction project goes. So I think, you're talking about buying a car, right? If you're competent about vehicles and, like, what you're looking for, it's so much easier to make a decision, because now you can say, okay, well, these are the things that I'm looking for. Does it check all the boxes? If you don't have that knowledge about what you're looking for, guess what? You end up having a longer period of time, well, at least for me who's very analytical, longer period of time determining, okay, well, what is it that I actually need? Okay, got it. So is it easy to fix? All right, does this fit in my budget? Like all of those components go into the decision making. And,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it goes against how big that decision you're making, right? Because the car is a big investment. If it's just, do I what do I want to eat tonight? That's also a decision you need to make. Uh, that doesn't cost you as much, and you can just leave it alone if you don't like the food you're making. So I think what you just said, and I really like that with the pandemic, that was the unknown, right? The unknown, what to do, even if it's a big organization or if it's a small organization, because it's more the unknown. Then it's so much more tougher or difficult to make a decision. So, Marcus, do you wanna jump in? Do you have some good knowledge here?
I had I think a small example of one of my first experiences of just running into a lot of information as far as being able to make a decision on something. Uh, in nuclear power, we have like a database that's called INPO. Basically, it's like the Institute of Nuclear Power. And a, a lot of companies all over the world kind of share some of their best practices if they had any failures or anything else like that of like mechanical devices or within the facility, which is totally awesome. Um, One of the things that we ran into was when we started looking for like a problem. To us, it was very new for to actually experience in that plant. But we decided to search and look on look on Info to try to see if it actually happened in any other plant, and we had way too much information um, to actually like break out and give to the team. So um, what started off as like, hey, here, this is brand new. What do we do to solve this problem? And it ended up having like 15 different ways that someone solved the problem. Um, then they wanted us to dive deeper to try to figure out which is the best way and which is unique to our plant. And looking for plants that were basically similar to ours. Uh, at that time, I worked at a boiler rock water reactor, so they were looking for people that actually worked in one of those type of reactor plants um, to try to narrow it down. And it still took a very long time to be able to get through that. And eventually, they just got to a point that said, "Hey, just pick three, and we'll present those."
Good example. Hussein, do you? I just want to say welcome to Sean. Sean, we'll come to you. We'll just go through yours, and then you can do your introduction in a few minutes. Hussein, have you faced difficult decisions, and what have you done?
Yeah, good morning, all. First, I will get share the words from my professor in WashU on construction management. Is first thing you do is you pause and you put yourself in the shoe of a clear-minded critical thinker. You collect the information you need to collect, and you make not a decision but an informed decision. So there's a big difference here. So I'm going to share an example from my last job. Um, about 2 years ago, we were constructing the hospital, and we had the tower crane installed, and we had a warning of hurricane. That was Hurricane Dorian, which was a Dodge that was coming and then shifted direction several times. So we had to make a decision, and there's a timeline. So we cannot wait too long. We had a drop down date where we have to make a decision whether to lower the tower crane or not. And we were tracking the hurricane, but we couldn't wait because there's a process to lower it down. So we couldn't wait too much. We couldn't wait about the news reports and about all these spaghetti models which were conflicting, and so we kind of put parameters. We sit down with the owner, and this is a communication very important, and with the people that are going to lower the crane and put it back up again, to explain to everybody that how long it will take to put it down, how long it will take to put it up, what is the disruption, what is the delay. It was like around maybe like 100,000 or more decision. Direct cost from paying the guy to lower it down and put it up, and loss of productivity, and delay of the hospital to the owner. So we had the committee that discussed that involved everyone, and then after that we were, with all the data that we had, we were not 100% sure because there's an unknown. Is the hurricane coming our way or not? And so once we get all the data possible, and all the scenarios, and we brought it up even to the leadership of the hospital, which at the end of the day say, well, the risk, what's the risk here? If we don't lower it up and the hurricane comes, versus if we lower it up and the hurricane doesn't come. If we lower it up and the hurricane doesn't come, there's a delay and we're going to suffer that. If the hurricane comes and we didn't lower it up, the tower crane will break and go down on the existing hospital with the existing patients. So the risk was too high, and they decided at the end to lower it down, and the hurricane never came. So
Yeah. But you were taking good care of everybody, right? Because that could have been a disaster. So there you were looking at the risk as well. I'm glad you did it, even though I'm sure you lost productivity and got delay. You took good care of everyone. Stephanie, have you faced any of these tough decisions, and what have you seen?
Well, I can best put it in the context of running businesses. I think that you always have to, to quote, I believe Simon Sinek, you have to keep your end and your outcomes in mind. And I think that keeps you on track, because you have to continually be reprioritizing why you're doing what you're doing and what those outcomes are. And I think that, I often, remind myself on a daily basis, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? And that's, I'd say, my North Star in every decision, because in an overwhelming online world, from one minute to the next, you can be persuaded to do something else, if it's small or whatever, but it may not have, enough of a, over time, a significant impact on your outcomes. That's my contribution.
Thank you, John. Welcome to Lean Construction Roundtable. So if you can introduce yourself and then just give us what you think about it.
I'm not sure how much I'm going to throw in about what I think about it. I was graciously invited to this. I'm a friend of Marcus and Brittany's, and someone noticed I was busy working on responses to something, but I got a very nice text inviting me to come in and listen. This might be something on my street. So I'm a former general contractor and a lean practitioner, and I go way back in the lean practice days. I'm a early student of Greg Howell. I have a fairly broad lean background, but I'm still heavy in the construction industry. I work as an owner's rep and a consultant and a teacher and blah, blah, blah. And I have a lifelong interest in improvement and the betterment of the circumstances and the environments that we work in, and have found Brittany and Marcus in particular to be great allies in this thinking. So I figure I better listen in. If you want more of a response to that, you rephrase your question for me, please.
Oh yeah, no. So we're talking about how making good business decision is a critical part of our job, and it often it follow a pattern. So we just talked about if you're buying a car, right? You follow certain, I don't know if you want to call it a checklist, but it follows these patterns, so you are making a good decision. But We're also talking about that the more information you know, the better it is. But at a
Absolutely.
certain point, right, and just what Hossein said, right, at a certain point, you have to make a decision. You can't just sit and wait, because you have time ticking, you have safety. There can be so
Yes.
many things going in, especially the crane. We're just talking about how have we seen it. I have an example. So in my electronic world, there's a really long life cycle on components. But at a certain time, we also have to just say, okay, now it's end of life. We're taking them out either because of we can't make them anymore, manufacture them anymore because of tools that they're just broken, or it could also be just because of low sales. But the components that we actually sell are also in some of the assemblies that we sell. So
Right.
that's a finished good. So we went in that we had an example where the input was, oh, just low sales, just kill it. And we were like, okay, it'll be great to have more information so we make sure that how big was the impact. Are they used in other assemblies that we're using? But somebody ran too fast and just like sent out all the information. um, and then we were just sitting there and had to clean up the mess after.
Right.
So in this case, the decision was fast. Yeah, it was the right decision, but we actually skipped a lot of steps that made it worse. And we had to spend so much time fixing it. Where I was sitting, oh my God, couldn't we just have slowed down, as we all said a little bit, slowed down in the beginning, and we will still have been, I think, a fast decision. Maybe not as fast, but we will have not wasted so much time in the end.
Yeah.
And I, yeah,
You bring a lot of thoughts to mind, so I'll try and summarize some of them fairly quickly. The first thing that comes to mind is something an old mentor of mine who was in intelligence his entire life said to me, which is, we make the best decisions we can for the people we are in the moment that we're in with the amount of information we have at that moment. And should the circumstances change, we'll change our decisions, meaning there's no coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I'm into deep thinking in the sense of, I'm also a great fan of the Eisenhower quote, which I think Brittany or Mark's heard me say before, which is, when it comes to matters of warfare, I've always found plans to be useless, but planning essential. So the concept of the fact that plans don't work, but planning is critical in the sense that you have to work through all the variables, right, for potential situations. The third thought that comes to mind is, we're definitely products of our training. It's been proven in high stress scenarios, whether military and law enforcement or whether construction and accident related. We are products of our training, and it's turned out that in high stress scenarios, especially accident type scenarios or violent or shock inducing ones, people react one of two ways, which is either according to their training, at which point they go completely subconscious and act exactly according to what they've been trained, or they'll actually do something completely irrational. And there's a whole bunch of studies that change the way that type of engagement between human beings, right, was done. Then there's another thought, which is, to me, I'm serious into problem solving, and so that takes um, analysis. So getting back to the Eisenhower quote, the concept, the idea, the fact that you have to take apart the nature of the problem that you're approaching, right? We're all in an industry and in business, and any serious business has, serious decision making components involved. And so to me, you have to analyze what's the nature of the problem. I happen to prefer things like Venn diagrams and the concepts of problem solving. You class the level of problem you're dealing with, and then you have I would say you have appropriate methods of dealing with it, simple, complicated, complex, chaotic, and then off the chart kind of. So that, depending on how directly related are your cause and effects, changes the way that you would approach the problem, right? And so then when we get into really serious and sophisticated stuff, so then I just covered a whole bunch of stuff. You have to be trained, you have to put a lot of analysis, you have to know the right questions to ask. You have the concepts of looking at problem solving in A3 thinking, which is, if the problem's too big, right, to approach, you have to break it down to smaller pieces. So all these things go together in my mind, about how we as human beings have to end up approaching complex solution asking scenarios, where solutions being sought. And that's what we do for a living. So I think it's a broad topic. I hope I was close to some kind
yeah,
of
no,
answer that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. It's really from the top. So I'm always the one that I love examples. And if I give a task or a problem where we need to make some decisions, but somebody needs to, in my team, but somebody needs to collect all the, no, to collect a lot of the information so we are better standing there making a decision. I can also see that if it's somebody's not asking too many questions, where I'm like, I'm not jumping in because I can't have 100 tasks and own everything. But I can stand from the sideline and I'm like, right, you should ask more questions, so we can get, so we have the information there, so we to be there faster. So um, I it's not that you have to mentor, you have to coach, but you have to be there on the sideline, and guide it so that person next time is in a much better shape, if you want to call it shape, to drive, or to actually to solve a problem, and make sure that we're getting as much information as we can in a certain manner of time. But I will love to hear if somebody has and advice, because I'm always looking for advice as well, for how to drive, or how to mentor your team, um, to search for, to search for the information, or to actually look for the problem. If it's the A3 you're using, that's great. But how do you guide them to get there so they can be more independent and make the right decisions?
I have lots to say about that. If no one's going to jump in, that's all about empowerment, and then you have to teach critical thinking, which is really to me, the root there is you have to teach to look for deep cause and deep effect. Cause and effect are everything, and you can figure out what can be the apparent causes for a challenge, and we want to get kind of big scale example style. When you look at failure, large failure analysis, it's never a single event. It's a series of perfect storm events where a series of actions lead to a very large consequence. I'm thinking, for example, on this is the BP accident in the Gulf. Well, when the pipe broke, it was a
Yeah,
2.5 year situation, caused an enormous amount of damage. But that had none of that. Whether if you're looking at the big dig analysis in Boston, or whether anything you're looking at like that, crane collapses, all that kind of stuff, there's never a direct cause in the sense that it was an immediate cause and effect line. You have to look at multiple influences and causes there. And so, how do you teach a team to do that? You have to teach them. It's a broad thing. They have to have a growth mindset and understand that they're capable of learning new things. Then you have to, in my mind, at least the most successful teams I've ever been privileged enough to be involved with or coached, even, it's go to it's deep change analysis. It used to be called that in the 80s and 90s. It's root cause analysis. You have to get
hmm,
accurate root causes if you want to get to accurate solutions, in my view. Hope that's making sense. I
yeah.
see Brittany's mic going on and on. That means to me, I
she's
think she wants to say
she's
something.
clapping at you. No, or maybe she is. Okay, Brittany, what do you wanna jump in?
Uh, you know, I was I was clapping in agreement, um, but in addition to that, I did have a thought as well. You know, we talked about A3 thinking and what the A3 size paper looks like and what all those components are a few weeks back. On simply because we're meeting here on Thursdays in the morning, it's really helpful to just kind of see these topics build upon each other, which is extremely great. And one of those components is exactly what you're talking about, Sean, that root cause analysis. Um, but it could even just be simpler than that. What is a true problem?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like how do we
Yeah,
get to the
root
actual
cause analysis. Yeah,
actual
right.
like let's and I really like 5 whys. I mean, that's one way to do
Me too.
root cause. I mean, you could do the fishbone diagram. Like there's also one thing that really helped me when I was delivering a sizable project for Walgreens in Chicago was we identified what we thought were problems, and we did very high level root causes as a team together. and then we assigned owners of those problems to go deeper and actually put it in a risk and opportunity log and rate the impacts, um, and bring that actually back to the team for further discussion.
I
Having
actually
it,
think that's brilliant,
I mean,
Brittany. Actually, we do something similar. I think it's a really smart thing to do.
let
Keep
me
going.
tell you, when I left that when I left that project and I left the company I was consulting, that was the thing that on the day I was leaving that project, they did a nice little speech. That's what they called out and said, that made the biggest impact for us. You were able to clearly help us identify what magnitude these problems or opportunities, right? Risks and opportunities. I mean,
Right.
right? Like
Exactly.
identify what they were clearly so we understood the status of the project on a whole
Exactly.
as it relates to all of these things in one comprehensive view. um
Yep.
I really really loved that as a teaching tool when talking about these risks collectively as a project team, but
Yep.
also when we talked with individuals. I would it was a hard thing to actually get updated because people didn't want it, like people didn't want to do it. And I would say, hey, look, let's talk about this risk. Let's really just dig in and talk about it. What are the parameters? What's causing it, and then what is the effect, right? Is it affecting schedule? Is it affecting quality? Is it affecting cost? Just identifying those couple things, like really high level and simply. What's that impact? What's the impact was made up of two things. Impact was made up of what is the size of the outcome, and what is the
Hmm.
likelihood of the outcome if this risk were able to actually be a true risk and like actually really really bombard our project fully as we might
Yeah, yeah. No,
expect,
I'm
right?
with you 100%. And let me add something, if you don't mind. Let me interrupt and add something because right in there, because I'm very much tuned in exactly what you're talking about and create what I call risk and reward analysis ladders when we're doing kickoff sessions for projects, right, along with the responsibility matrix, which comes afterwards for figuring out how it's going to get done. But what I wanted to add was I also, in that exact same deal, follow pretty much everything exactly what you're talking about, but I also lay out what is the opportunity because every risk has an opportunity as well. So part for me to fill the rest of that assessment out, I not only list the things that you just said, what's the scope, what's the potential, what's the potential impact, and all the rest of that kind of stuff, but also what's the opportunity here. And it may just be a learning opportunity or something else, but I always put that up there as well when we're doing like the group look at it and we have a large team of, the design and the construction side or whatever it's going to be, whatever portion that we're managing or facilitating at that point. But do you understand my point why I'm saying that we make sure to put every one of those risk and reward scenarios also has an opportunity for growth, for learning, for expansion, and that to me is part of that assessment that needs to be made when you're looking at how you're going to approach the problem. Am I making sense?
Totally fully making sense. If you guys are interested in a book that calls out using obstacles, quote unquote obstacles, as opportunities, I just finished reading a book, Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Really really interesting way about just looking at what's in front of you that seems to be a huge issue, but knowing that the front door is not the only way to get into the house. You could use a window, you could use the back door. I mean,
Cut
you
a new.
you could cut a new hole, you could go to the next house. Maybe there's a different opportunity that you're not looking at because of this problem right in front of you.
I really like that. So when do you, because again, it takes time, right, to look at and say, to go through and say, let's look at the problem, do the risk opportunity log, write it down, all that. Um, the balance of that, now you're saying that let's sit down or we find an owner that will do it. How big of a problem is it that you're facing?
That's a good question.
Is it when it stops a whole project, or you can see something is going to interrupt, or when do you say now we do it?
Brittany and Santa, in lean thinking, that's called the last responsible moment. And the assessment of how to determine what's called the last responsible moment is an entire conversation unto itself, right? To me. I mean, that's the simple answer to what you're asking. How do you know? And also, Brittany, don't you think that at this point something should be said, or Marcus, either one of you guys, something should be said about choosing by advantages, and the fact that, again, depending on the complexity of the problem solving that is being required to deal with some type of solution, there are methods of ever increasing depth and analysis, I guess would be a good word, that increases the ability for us to create a rational solution matrix and then try and make the best choices out of that. But again, it goes from being very simple. I think some Brittany said, goes from can be very simple. There can be very simple cause and effect scenarios that can be fixed very quickly. Welds aren't working, and figure out why that weld's not working and change the process, and all the welds work now. So, or there can be these really, really complex, multifaceted decisions that affect in a chaotic decision, where
Yeah.
one element affects all the other elements in change. That takes a different type of analysis. But I just want to mention
Yeah.
those two things to kind of
Yeah. But so you're saying as well, you
pool.
scale it on the way, right?
Yep.
As well. So you're still using the same methods, but
Mm-hmm.
you're scaling it depending if it's a simple or complex. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to welcome Amirali. I hope I pronounced your name correct. Welcome to Lean Construction Roundtable. What we're talking about today, so you can jump in as well. I would love to hear is it's about making good business decision, and it's really critical. You need to make it because it's part of our jobs. It's vital to every company's of well-being. We've been talking about that sometimes a decision can be made late or it can be made now, or we're talking about how information is always better to have, and there's always a process behind it as well. And that's what we just talked about, that when you're making that decision, if it's simple or complex, you you still follow that pattern. And we talked about that to make it simple, like we talked about if you're buying a car, you follow some of these decisions and patterns. So Emma, welcome here. To please introduce yourself and let's hear a little bit about you.
Sure thing. Thank you, Sannah, Brittany, and Marcus. And yes, yeah, you did pronounce it correctly. Um, Hello, everyone. My name is Amirali. I am a project manager slash owner's representative. I work for a real estate investment firm, and yeah, currently I'm working on a real estate project out in Gladdenburg, Tennessee, and that's about it. The core responsibilities of what I do at this company is basically trying to come up with um, a project management framework that could, using different iterations of, because we are doing a lot of projects at a time, we're using different approaches to see which one works best. Try to gather as much data as possible so that the next time we do a project, we try to ensure that um, a lot of these yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to say decisions, but a lot of things are pre-planned so that we don't face a lot of difficulties or problems or issues um, during the important part of the construction part of construction phase of the project. So that's what I'm doing, and yeah, that's just a very briefly of what I do.
Okay, welcome. So I want to talk about reflection as well, because now that the example that I gave, right, that I could see that we were wasted so much time. We made a fast decision, and then we did not follow the process, and then we were just drowning in fixing it and waste of time or everything else. So it was easy after to look at the reflection and saying, hey, we should not just do something fast, even though we have people on the team that just want to run really fast. But you could actually show them here, right, with the reflection saying, hey, look at this. This actually took us longer. We had a lot of people working on it, cleaning it up, looking at everything. So that was easy in my world of electronic manufacturing. But I would love to hear from lean construction or in the lean world or construction world, how, because I think the speed is different, and you are depending on different teams that works together. and and it's partnerships. So how do you go in if you can see that there was made a decision and you should have done something else, but all the lessons learned? How do you bring these different partners together and create a reflection on it so you are doing it better next time, or don't you do it?
Oh, I am a big fan of lessons learned, a look back on a project in a um, project completion. Um, but what I've been learning over the years by participating in lean conversations is, to your point, projects tend to be a bit longer. I mean, you're in no way, shape, or form are you going to be doing a project that's like less than 6 months. Like that's just not how construction works. It's at least 6 months from design, all the inception, hiring everybody, right? Like, and then actually building it out. I mean, and that 6 months would be pretty fast. Um, at least that's been my experience. I don't know, maybe other people have been able to do it faster. But for me, uh what I've learned is that iterative lessons learned, like how, okay, yep, we just finished this milestone. What could we have done better? What would have made this process more smooth? I would conduct those as an owner's rep and asking those questions like right at the end of that milestone. So we capture all that goodness and document that in the meeting notes, but also come back to it and do a deep dive and really review like every single phase of the project and say, okay, well, what were you missing at this time? Or look at the change orders and say, okay, well, how did this particular change order come about? What was missed? Um how did we get here? And obviously we know all the documentation for the most part is usually, documented fairly well. Um and we can pull that up, but it's a question of how do we avoid it next time, right? Like we may not be working together the next project. Sometimes we might be working with certain clients. They had um preferred contractors and preferred architects, engineers, and that, and we would always be asking that question. Okay, so well, if we work together again, we know we can do this together, but how about when you work with someone else? How can you circumvent this same issue? What questions are you going to ask? And have a recommendation for each one of those things. What I used to do was ask each person to go through a thought experiment before we actually meet, but we would sit down and meet for a good 2 hours, if not more. I make sure to provide them food and all that, in order to make the time fun and exciting, some good breaks in between, and really just do a deep dive on that reflection. So that's something I love. I love the question, Sana, and I would like to
Yeah,
learn other ways people have done this too, because I'm always looking for ways to improve the reflection.
it looks like you're taking them out for a date, right? And then getting to know each other. No, that's great. So we just have Anthony. You just joined as well, so please introduce yourself and let's hear what you have to say.
Thanks for having me up. I was in the background listening, and I just had a question. We talked about the processes that we could implement and use that could help. Um, but because I'm not in construction necessarily, I'm more on the technology and wireless communication side of things. I just wanted to see what tools and software or devices are being implemented or used in construction that help facilitate some of these lean methodologies and so forth.
So this is where I need support because the question was more in construction. So who wants to support me?
I think I'm misunderstanding the question. Is this a specific question around making good business decisions and tools to help to support that? Or are you talking about just broad brush software tools for just supporting lean and construction?
It could be a software, it could be handheld devices that it could be for radio or voice and video communication. It could be RFID scanners. It could be safety tags or equipment. So I was just trying to get more familiar with what tools, devices, and software are used to help progress and help construction become more lean and efficient.
Got you. We've been talking about a lot of different tools and in a very manual way over the past few weeks. And, some of them included like Gamba A3 thinking, and I know Anthony, because you've gone through that. Like you're Lean Six Sigma, you understand those kind of tools. But from a software perspective, there are only a couple that, in my opinion, I've encountered that are really worthwhile to dig into. Um, from my experience, so Sean mentioned choosing by advantages. I have to look up the software to pull that up for you, but that one is really great with choosing by advantages, which is right in line with our discussion today. So let me come back to you on that one. But from a last planner system, oh, a last planner system review. There's a company, there's actually a couple of companies who do this, but I'm in touch with one that's called Touch Plan, that allows you to really set it up so that many different parties to the project can do a last planner scheduling session, a collaborative one, um, using TouchPlan in disparate locations. And you actually still have like the post-it note capability. You can slide your post-it notes and have those conversations on a phone call, but you have a board, um, similar to how you would have with all your swim lanes, and you can move your post-it notes around, and it also turns into a Gantt chart um, at the end of it, so that you can use it and update it throughout the project. So I like that tool, but let me go back and look for the choosing by advantages tool. There's a contractor I worked with that used it heavily. Let me just see what that is and get back to you.
There's there's a lot of companies that are getting more into the visualization space. So open space is one. Also, um, there's another company called Instruction Site. Um, I was looking at one of the companies that Brittany interviewed like a while back. It's called Spotter, and basically it's using uh, I would say wireless technology to measure, uh, like basically it's like a health. They came from the health performance space. So the idea of the process was just to check to see if like basically check to see if people are tired or if they're walking through hazard zones, to notify them that they are in an area that could be a potential risk of an injury or something may fall or something like that, or just to check their fatigue levels. um there's processes that we haven't talked about, but there's a process called advanced work packaging, which is more of I would say, a philosophy to increase time on tools. Um, Hopefully, we can bring Ofa on so she can talk about it more. But those are some of the things that I'm thinking about off the top of my head. Um, but if we want to go more into tools, he's not on the call right now, but Cody, he actually ran a conference with a lot of these construction tools and software and processes out there. I can definitely I can introduce you on LinkedIn, but he's definitely, when he is in the room, we should probably give him the opportunity to speak about some of the more of these tools.
If I could just chime in a little bit here, I mean, there are a number of tools that subscribe to some of the processes, and actually, I would say Procore and PlanView are the ones that stick out for me. But to actually find a specific tool that takes the lean process all the way through, I would agree with Brittany. I mean, they are few and far between. Um, and this is part of the challenge in using any construction tool, is how to marry together what I'll call the soft skills of lean into a more technical process within a particular software.
Totally agree with you. Hussein, I want to make sure you have the opportunity to speak, but I did find the Choosing by Advantages software. It's called Paramount Decisions. I know Anthony just dropped, but for everyone who is here still on the call, and Anthony can look at the live stream after, I'll also send him a message. Um, yeah, Paramount Decisions is a really helpful software for you to outline all the components of, like, what are the benefits of this one option, and let's go ahead and weigh the benefits here. And you have it in one tool, and you're able to compare and contrast really simply across the board. So with that, I'm done speaking.
Okay, so just it's not a lean tool, but I just want to mention what we're using. So we're using Monday.com and we're using Trello. So it's between these two tools, and I believe as well that there's no perfect tool. It's all the way, of your processes and the people and the mindset that you have that actually is the best way to execute and follow the lean thinking. So Hussein, I'm sorry I cut you off. So please speak up.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think we talked about that before, or even I talked with Stephanie that construction industry is lagging behind in technology a lot. There's lots of opportunities to use technology in construction. But however, what we one thing that has been used a long time, not to its full potential yet, but it's been improving, is BIM. BIM as a process, not also only as tools. It has been a really good process and tools for helping decision making construction. Um, I think maybe we are now taking it for granted or not. It depends on if you are using it. But I think most of the projects are using it. Um, so yeah, building information modeling and with the tools that they are using, Revit or Naviswork or whatever, it's been really helpful in making decision and uh, for architects, for engineers, as well as for trade partners who use that for facilitating the manufacturing of sheet metal for HVAC using the BIM tools. So just an example. So that's a very important tool in construction, being heavily used now and helping decision making.
Thank you. So let's just reset the room really quick because I can see we have some new listener. So what we're talking about today in the Lean Construction Roundtable is that making good business decision is critical, and how do we do it? And sometimes you need you need more information to make better decisions. Sometimes you need a better process. You also need to define success, so you know what the goal is. So it actually be to have the same language. Sometimes you make a decision based on gut. Sometimes you made it based on data driven, and both things are actually a decision. But it's a balance game. And I love the discussion today because it always spins out around tools, it spills around training, it goes out in the mindset, because everything is connected. It's just not one thing. So if anybody wants to come up and have their opinion, their experience, let us know. So I can see Adam, you jumped up here, so welcome.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you, Sannah. I
yeah.
appreciate that. I love the topic. To me, you're really speaking to something that ignites me a lot. In fact, Colin Milberg, who's a lean consultant in Boston, and myself, we wrote a paper for IGLC that was titled Complexities of Project Controls. And so when you're talking about making good business decisions, that's where my mind immediately goes is, okay, well, you know, what type of controls do we have on our projects? More important, are there processes for those controlled points to be able to understand the health of a project? Uh, in my opinion, it's three real easy things. Those are organization, cleanliness, and inventory control, inventory buffers. But from a more complex standpoint, when you look at project controls and you're analyzing the risk in the deal, and it's kind of these different clusters of um, uh, key metrics on a job. And so some of those can even be behavioral and trying to understand, if we're representing the behaviors of a good business or it's just funny how those behaviors impact decisions. And so I think our industry as a whole currently measures project controls in the wrong way. I think there's a lot of fallacies with the way we currently measure projects. If and I guess I could dive deeper, but when again when we're thinking about good business decisions, we've got to really have the right information at our fingertips to be able to and the not just the right but the accurate information, the truths behind what is really happening on the project, both behaviorally and from a flow standpoint, in order to make good business decisions. So we'd be remiss to not talk about project controls in this conversation.
Yeah, it's great because when I said before that we need the same language, and when I'm listening, right? So you're saying control points. Brittany was talking about a milestone, um, and it's so important that when a team gets together, depending on what industry, that you actually have the same language of where you're going, and the same expectations. Um, so and I think and that goes into behaviors as well, because we all have different ways of understanding each other. Um, I have a project right now where I pass the baton and saying, "Hey, team member, you are now doing this." And then after a few days, I had a quick meeting, and I was like, "Okay, so where are we?" And the person was just not as far as I was in my mindset with all the questions and what should we know and be critical thinking and where to go. So I need to slow down and bring this person more on board to ask these questions, because I think making the decisions of setting it up, if you don't know everything as much as you can and have true information in the front, it just you make the wrong decisions, or it can turn you into a lot of loops to go somewhere else. So Stephanie, what? Oh yeah, Adam, yeah.
I was just going to add, so one quick thing that the result of writing that paper helped me to understand is that all value stems from our owner, and the last person to touch that value is our craft worker. And so that craft worker becomes your last control point before you turn over value to the owner. And so when we're truly measuring, um, I don't know that things like quality or craft worker behaviors are really taken.
Okay, I lost a little bit. I don't know if I was the only one. I couldn't hear the last piece, Adam.
The result of that paper was really we helped us to understand the last control point, and we started calling it the last controller, right? A little spin off the last planner system, but we have one last control point to make sure that work is turned over to an owner in a quality and safe manner. And currently, we don't measure we don't really measure quality real well on projects from a project control standpoint, nor do we really measure those behaviors that we talked about a little bit ago. So again, just challenging the industry's current view on project controls to really say, hey, are we controlling projects in a way that makes good business decisions?
Yeah.
I would like to add to what Adam said and to what Sean said. So Sean mentioned the last responsible moment from lean construction that we are all taught when we are studying lean construction, and Adam is talking about measuring. And actually, the proper lean thinking and lean culture and critical thinking is both. So and I agree with Adam. We are not doing a good job about control and monitoring, and that's why we don't get to the last responsible moment, or truly, as Lean explained it. We need to spend lots of effort from the start of the project, or even before the start of the project till the end, and continuous effort. When we say continuous improvement, it means for lean, how we can have continuous improvement if we're not daily measuring, planning, seeing the talking about the control point that Adam talked about is very important. Measuring the health of the project, measuring where we are, measuring the health of our process, so that when we reach the last responsible moment, we have all the information to actually make a decision. And not only about project, it's about us construction, but it's about any project or any business. You need to the last responsible moment is to reach that. You must have worked a lot daily about collecting the proper information, throwing everybody to get all the knowledge, all the information to the table, so that you can decide, take an informed decision. And that's a very important step that I think a lot are missing. And then when we sit down I see lots of people. It might not be true to the audience here, but I've witnessed lots of people that they come to make a decision, and the day of the decision or the hour of the decision, and they start collecting information then and there. So that's my
Preach, Hussein. That I love what you, man. Preach. You're talking my love language right now. Like we're talking about pushing decisions to where the information is, right? Like the whole Gemba go and see approach. And to Sannah's comment earlier, alignment and clarity. And I heard you brush on it too, Hussein. Like we're doing, we're respecting people when we are making these very complex plans simple and clear. And we're able to allow these folks who are in the field, again, I call them last controllers, because that's it. That's the last responsible moment of quality, right? To install a quality product, that is your last responsible moment to do that. And so those people are the last controllers who are, have all this information coming to them, and they have to make sense of it and deliver what the owner wants. And if that information is not clear or the team is not aligned, the disrespect there is chaos, where that person doesn't know what the expectation is. And we find ourselves in that all the time, where they're not delivering work to an expected quality, and we're redoing things way, way too much. So I love where you're at, Hussein, and how you brought the last responsible moment in there is so critical. But we've got to push the decisions to where the information is, right? We've got to empower our people who are boots on the ground to make those right decisions. And again, that's where that's when we know we're making good business decisions, is when we're making the decision in the moment, in the last responsible moment, with all available information to us. And that information comes to us from craft.
I really like what you're saying, pushing the decision where the information is. That's the new title of your article or your book.
Right.
Yeah, we just got it down. So what I'm doing as well, because I this with information. How do you get the information? What I'm facing a lot of times is it's departments, or you can call it silos, that some teams just see, oh, they if it's just one their little silo department, they see, oh yeah, we're touching just the next area who we work with. Sometimes they forget to lift up their head and look at the whole organization, so they can see the causes and the effect, and saying, oh, if we make this decision now, what is the bigger picture? Is it still a good decision, or should we actually go and talk to this department to make sure that everything is still a good decision? And so when I start, if we're doing with critical thinking, I always like zoom out. I put on an A3 and I put in saying, this is the background. This is where we are right now. This is what our problem is. We need to look into this. And I'm always also putting on to say this is out of scope, because you can also make it too big, and then you can't get world peace in one in one day. But to define what is out of scope also helps at what we don't need to talk about. um, but but creating and teaching the team to make sure to look at the bigger picture, actually in my where I am, helped us to make better decisions.
Can I just ask a quick question here? As
Yeah.
I sit and learn more and more about the systemic issues throughout the construction industry, is perhaps part of the underlying reason that there aren't more standards is because each project is unique unto itself, and therefore all the players that come, to perform that particular build are, I mean, you kind of, it's like a play that, doesn't have an extended engagement. It's a one time shot with these particular players. And it seems to me what's perhaps lacking in the industry, generally speaking, is standards from all the levels that would therefore, every time a project is created and performed, therefore the things that the good and great things that everybody talks about would have a chance to be replicated.
Hi, Stephen. I'm gonna be a bit harsh here. Um, Sorry in advance. There are standards, and there are standards because we studied them. Unfortunately, the end, in construction, is what I witnessed so far is there is a, a knowledge gap, an education gap between uh, on people in construction, and there has not been good reconciliation of that gap at all. So you have people who studied, went to universities, colleges, studied courses online, studied all these standards of doing project management and construction management, and people who didn't. Even people who reach leadership position coming from craft directly and who never did, and who had a sort of alienation, if I may say, or not, to that. And you come to talk to them, and they say, "No, we know what we're doing. We've been doing it right the whole time." So there's a big group of people from this side and a big group of people from this side, and there is always that constant friction between the two parties. Sorry, I've been a bit harsh, but that's the reality.
And I'll add on to that as well. Our industry doesn't understand nor takes the time to understand production laws, right? These are, like you say, they're standards. They're the physics are surrounding production. There's only 4 of them: bottlenecks, variation, the Kingsman's formula, and Little's law. Those 4 production laws govern what we do from a flow perspective in construction. We do not understand those laws, and it's quite evident by our current CPM practices, where we just start things because, hey, the schedule says to start it. Let's get it started. So we're on schedule, right? Well, it's the wrong mentality, the wrong method. It doesn't work. It leads to people being in silos, right? I don't know who's read a CPM schedule that's a CPM schedule that you did not make, that's ultra clear, that respects people. To me, um, 27 pages of a schedule is complicated. And I'll add, Miss Stephanie, all of our projects are different and customized, but that's the same comment that we get when we start talking about tax planning and how you can't, run a standard through the building. And I would argue that all construction projects have similar components, whether it's deep foundation. I'll take you through like 10 seconds of how to build a building, right? You have deep foundations, then you have utilities, then you have shallow foundations, then you have your structure, then you have your skin, then you have your MEP interior, the guts, and then you do your finishes and you're done. And you have a warranty period. Like all projects, whether it's a renovation, there might be a demo activity, they all follow a very similar line. And so I guess I love what's happening in the industry right now. Like Hussein said, there's kind of a CPM, like there's a big push to change the way the standards are right now because again, we don't understand those production laws. And I love Sannah's comment on the silos. Like that's one of my favorite things. And Nicholas Mo wrote This is Lean. It's a fantastic book that really changed my perspective on lean. But Sannah, we're talking about getting out and breaking down these silos. And the way Nicholas describes it in the book is like, hey, we're playing soccer on a soccer field, but each player on the soccer field is in a tent. So when people are in tents, it's like, oh, the ball came in my tent. I'm just going to kick it out as fast as I can because I don't want any balls in my tent. With not caring which way I'm kicking it, where it came from, who's on my team, and what the score is. Like there's no scoreboard in construction with what we do. And so when we can create a scoreboard that creates competition, that provides the clear information that we need to be successful, like how many timeouts are there, or how much time's left in the game, or how much penalty, or what's the score, like these are critical things for a soccer match that need to be addressed. Well, what are those things in construction, and how are we making those clear to respect people, to allow them to, like we're talking about in this whole thing, like to bring it all together. It's all about making good business decisions with regards to construction. So and I know I just said a lot there. I'll kind of tone down, but you all got me fired up when we're talking about these standards. And Hussein, you're dead on. Like there are standards, but they're misunderstood and not obeyed. We don't pay attention to the physics of production.
Thank you for that, Adam. That was very helpful.
I would like to add one thing here. I mean, we are very harsh on the CPM schedule, and I understand that it's very complex and it's very hard to understand. And I would even like to add, I've never ever seen a correct CPM schedule to begin with.
Amen.
To start to judge it, really, you must have a correct one, because people who are producing it are people who are experienced in P6, not in scheduling. And again, it's about the knowledge. Project management, PMI, Project Management Institute, started from construction people. Started from people that trying to put some sort of standard to manage projects. If you all go see who are the founders of PMI, they are all coming from project managers from construction. But unfortunately, I've never seen a PMP or a guy who has studied project management or have a master's in project management or knowledge of project management in the construction project that I've been in. Even project manager, senior project manager, leaders, whatever, no one has studied that. No one has studied scheduling. No one has really built up a schedule from scratch according to the standards set by the industry, by these guys, by the PMI guys, or even a CPM schedule starting long time ago from Department of Defense, and has evolved a lot. But nobody has even done that correctly. CPM doesn't allow you to have float. It teach you about float to eliminate, but everybody using it, everybody putting that, and this is one flaw among many that I've seen. So I'm just gonna stop here.
Hussein, and I want to be very clear here because CPM, there's a proper way to do CPM, and it is complex, like you said. Um, there's also a construction method of how we common practice is managed, and we don't understand it, and we're not doing it right. And to to bring this thing back whole circle, we we are not allowing, when these CPM schedules are made, we don't have the information we need to have the most accurate, predictable workflow. And again, that speaks to we're not allowing the people with the information to make the decisions at that time. And so, or that information simply not available as well. That could be the process issue. So I love the conversation, Hussein, but I do want to be very clear because I understand CPM, like proper CPM is a real and could be a very huge advantage to us, but we just don't practice proper CPM. We practice common practice construction CPM.
Yeah, just one last point I want to put here. Adam, you brought that, and I didn't mention it. It's very important. And the first thing when we study scheduling, the professor taught us and asked us, who does the plan? Who puts the schedule? Who gives the information? It's the people on the field. If you don't have that information, you cannot schedule. So, yeah.
So I'm learning what a CPM is right now. So I'm excited. So so what I'm hearing is that even though you make the planning and maybe you don't have all the information. So how many times do you go back and I don't know if you want to say refresh it, but update it with the information and actually go to the people on the field and saying now it looks like this, and then you share that information. I'm hoping that's happening, but can anybody teach me how that works?
Okay. Well, to be brief again, sorry, because that scheduling is very dear to me, and yeah. So the scheduling of the construction project, or even planning any project, even not in construction, planning a wedding, for example, it's a project. So it's iterative. Planning is iterative. So you must first doesn't mean that you just scramble a plan out of your head without proper knowledge. So you need to try to do it right the first time, knowing that you're never going to do it right the first time. So you need to collect all the information and the data possible at the time you have from the end, from the people in the field in the beginning, not do the schedule first and then present it to the people. It's like you're wasting your time. You must collect the information from the actual last controllers that Adam talked about. That's the right way of scheduling. That's the right way of planning. To collect all the information, you might have that information from previous project, but however, since every project is unique, you might not have the complete information. So you need to fill in the gap of knowledge from the people who are going to do the work, right? So and that was a hurdle in the last in contracting, in the construction and contracting, because we don't have that
10%.
these people on board. Before lean, before integrated project delivery.
Hussein,
Not,
could I
and even
add
now we
something
don't have
to what you're saying?
yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like you're getting really passionate about it, and I so appreciate it. I know I have a little bit of time left before I here have to jump to a next meeting as well. Um, I've been a scheduler by trade. I have too much CPM experience. I lived in P6 for a long time. Um, when you schedule from an owner's perspective, you cannot use your field labor perspective. You don't have it yet. But I agree with your comment, Hussein, around you have to schedule with as much information as you can perceive at the time that you know it. And you do have to make a list of assumptions around what you are determining. And when you make those lists of assumptions, you need to always make sure they're clear enough so that when you come back to it, you know what has caused the change. Because as you onboard people, you want to verify that schedule. The other thing, when I was a schedule manager, uh, that was really, really helpful, um, was we determined a specific cadence by when we expected updates to take place. Not only from our general contractor, but our architect on the progress of design while the design was going forward. So whatever that cadence is, it's going to be less frequent probably for the owner, but really your daily update, like it should be daily updates from the last planners of work. We talked about this in another conversation earlier this week, that Jesse was hosting, Plan Percent Completes. If you can get it as quickly as daily, that's going to get you to a better accuracy when it comes to that frequency of updates. And that is something that the last planner allows, which is really super awesome. That doesn't happen with typical CPM schedule planning. So that was my thought on that.
Yeah.
Brittany,
So
have y'all embraced tact planning, Brittany? Sorry, Hussein.
Well, no, we haven't. Not on the owner side. That's the side I live on these days.
Understood.
yeah,
Go ahead, Hussein.
yeah. Sorry. So Whitney, and I appreciate you being a scheduler and from the owner, but again, I have to insist that when you do a schedule starting from the owner side to launch a project at the beginning, there is something in project management we call that um, a high level scheduling. That's not the CPM. You cannot really do a real CPM at that level before you have the trades in. That's what I studied from how to really do schedule. So you cannot have a proper CPM. When we say CPM, critical path method, when you cannot build a critical path if you don't have the trades on board.
I
That
completely
cannot
agree
happen.
with you 100%. You have to have the input in order to understand 100%.
Yeah, so you can get the high level schedule from with milestone schedule from what the owner wants, and this is we are all working towards what the owner wants, and but you have to verify that when you build your CPM, and this shouldn't contradict with lean. I studied lean and I'm very understand lean and very passionate about lean, but when we do the last planners is to help us in production, not on the field, to help do the process more efficiently and have everybody on the same page and going in the same direction, uh, because you cannot but that doesn't conflict with having a proper schedule, because we need to build the proper schedule in the beginning in order to pull from it the 6 week look ahead and the 1 week look ahead from the last planner. But if the schedule that we are building at the beginning is not correct, we're not gonna have the proper information to move forward. And unfortunately, that's what's happening and keep on happening.
Adam, do you want to talk about tax planning a little bit because I'm unaware?
Uh, I would, yes. I, we just don't know how much time. So, to me, and I agree with what Hussein and Brittany are saying. However, we got to start somewhere, and our great builders are able to forecast a critical path based on what needs to happen. Right? We've got to buy something. We've got to buy durations. We've got to buy we have to, and so the issue with the critical path is the logic behind it, which you can't see. And so tact planning, so tact comes from the German word baton. An orchestrator has a baton and keeps the whole orchestra in line based on using that baton and establishing a rhythm or a beat. So like your heart beats at a tact, right? I was introduced to this concept by BMW. I did a large project. It was an expansion of their production line to accommodate a new model, and we turned over a CPM schedule, and they said, "This is great, but we can't understand it. Go do a tact plan." And I was like, "Well, what's a tact plan?" And so basically, you think about a train, or everybody, most folks in Lean have heard about the parade of trades. And so we're doing just that, right? We have a train of trades or a parade that we're going to march through each area. So we're kind of thinking about this as a geographical schedule. Some people call it a one-piece flow, but you're trying to establish common or a regular beat or interval in each area of the project. And you do so by breaking the scope down, breaking the building down, and understanding, modifying our resources and our inventory and our capacities to an area. So, for instance, if in one 10,000 square foot area, it might take 10 electricians to get through that space, and it might only take 2 painters to get through that space. And so we're going to balance our workload or our resources based on the expectation at moving through that space. And so I would advise you to all check out leantact.com. Jason Schroeder is doing some amazing things. He's got YouTube videos that do it way more justice than I just did. It works. I've compared it to establishing Scrum goals, like small milestone goals, really area driven, to march a parade of trades through a space. Again, when you see these documents, they're typically on one page, right? And on the left, you have listed every activity that needs to happen. And up top, you have all of the dates, all of the days on the entire project. And really, it's a pretty simple equation of, hey, I've got this much time and I've got to divide it by this much scope, right? And on the other side of that equation looks like, hey, I've got my production unit rates or my throughput rates, and then I have these complexities in construction that are the production rates multiplied by the complexities in construction. And so those complexities could include capabilities of trade partners, density of scope of work, whatever excuses we receive on a daily basis in construction. And so what I think tact planning does is it kind of bridges this gap of our current CPM practices and how we schedule high level, but really we don't know the scope because quite honestly, it hasn't been defined or we don't have the right experts on board. But we always put together this kind of, we know the time frame and these are kind of the milestones that we need to hit, but we don't really dive in to too much. Like there's no real driver that links that to the last planner system. And I think that's what's missing, right? We go from this high level deal into the daily, like the day-to-day grind. And I understand the look ahead planning and the pool planning, but we don't have a great way of documenting that information. When you start looking at tact planning, it really allows you to forecast, 6 months, 8 months, and things happen. This is construction. Where replans happen. However, it's the law of variability. I talk about the production laws all the time because these are the things that are physics of production. Like these are this is the gravity. Like when we are worn out at the end of the day, it's because we're fighting these production laws. And so tact forces us to obey the production laws. It does. Like, so variation, right? Brittany, you're talking about that day-to-day variation from a last planner. And we realize the second that we get off, right? So that's the law of variation. And the second we get off of what our plan was, we got to get right back to it or have another plan to get there. And so the day-to-day, right, we can get back, but we don't always get back day to day. Often last planner system tickets are pushed, right? Tact allows us to flow. tact establishes a flow on a project, and when you have like flow should be the goal of all production systems. Um, Tact enables a project to flow, but not just a project to flow. It's a visualization tool that is very easy to read, right? You know, if I'm a trade partner and I have a specific scope and I'm the red cell, and I go and I just look for all the red cells, and then I look to the left and I say, oh, that's my activity for rough end walls on area, floor 2, area A.1. And then I go back to that red cell and I go up and it tells me, oh, I'm supposed to be there on June 17th. Oh boy. Like, do I have everything? Am I ready? And then it says, okay, well, on June 18th, I'm supposed to be in level 2, area A.2. Like, that means I have one day to get my work done in that area. Is it possible? And so it's just a really good visualization tool to keep us on track, to eliminate variability, to control a project better. For us, again, if you're not tact planning on your projects, like relating this back to good business decisions, I would heavily encourage you to invest at least an hour on leantact.com, where they have free templates. They have, examples. I would watch some of Spencer Easton's YouTube videos on lean tact. Um, the Europeans are doing this and very successfully doing this. Germany, there's a couple of really cool programs out there. And again, I'm not too big on the software side of things, but tacting.com, TAKT.ing.com, maybe. Janish and Marco are the two that I learned tact from while at BMW. They worked for BMW. They controlled BMW's construction. They try and drive tact. So there's also an app called, or a software called intact.app, INTAKT.app. It's a really, really easy way to start experimenting with tact, where they literally just ask you some questions and you answer the questions and they build you a tact plan. It's phenomenal. So again, making good business decisions, um, we've got to be tact planning as an industry. And this is a wave that I have seen coming for the last few years. But with Jason Schroeder and Spencer Easton and Felipe, an engineer who these are all people who are pushing the tact mentality. That's probably a bad way. They're all flowing the tact mentality, and it is going to take over our industry, and it's only a matter of time. So I would highly suggest or recommend to the team that we all start embracing, or at least educating ourselves on tact planning. Did that, what questions out of that? Because I didn't do it justice. I know I didn't do it unprepared with 7 minutes.
Your passion for learning and continuous learning flowed through your voice now, and that was something that was consistent through this process. And I think you did a good job from my view of being able to hear it. But I understand that going into a deep dive and would be advantageous for me to do. But you sold me on the path of the journey of this. And also, the last thought about this is even kind of changing the title of the room to kind of match a little bit more about like changing the construction delivery model would be a good thing, as far as a third idea that I had as far as the big picture of this. So, Stephanie, I saw she just went on mute, so I guess I'll just
No,
pass the
I
ball.
just I absolutely second it. This has been one of the more I'll call it productive sessions I've ever been in. And I think, the way that the conversation rolled out, and how, between Hussein and Adam uncovering perhaps where the gaps are, and now you suggesting to change the name of the room, I just say go for it. I've got my pom poms out. Thank you.
Yep, Marcus, I'm not too I'm trying to figure out Clubhouse right now. Maybe I need to hit some of those rooms. But I mentioned the book earlier. This is Lean by Nicholas Modig. And the whole book is centered around three concepts. It's flow, visualization, and continuous improvement. And tact does all three with our schedules, and we really, really need to pay attention to it, because it tact respects people, and I can't say that about our other current models of scheduling in the business.
Yeah, my last take. Yeah, I agree, Adam. And I read the book. This is Lean, and I'm really delving since a year now into the Lean construction. But what I'm saying is, um, we cannot judge a standard, which is the earlier standard, the previous standard in construction, harshly once they are not done properly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, yes, we have to improve. We have to continuously improve, and that have been um, even the people who started PMI and started PMP and project management and set up the previous standard. They were continuously improving. They were pushing the idea of we need to continuously improve, and this is why they said planning is iterative. It's not you do a rigid plan and you stop. You continuously every day collect information, monitor, and what's the health of your project. And probably at that time, back in the 60s and 70s, they were not really. It was they didn't put it as fluently as Lean is doing now, and this is why I'm jumping on the Lean board, because I say that okay, people didn't grasp the previous standard and the previous knowledge of construction, and they were continuously on constructing new projects without understanding the standard of project management and construction management. Uh, so maybe now Lean can better explain that to them and show them where they are not doing things properly. So yeah, absolutely, anything to continuously improve and do the right thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Hussein, if you enjoyed that book by Nicholas, he also has an operational excellence course that I was fortunate enough to take, and it's a game changer because it's entirely focused on creating self-improving organizations. And when we hit that level, we've done something really special and game changing.
Yeah, definitely look into.
I like the passion in the room. Question, because when you do if it's a tag planning, right? Do you then split it? And this is a question for you, Adam, because I'm learning here. Do you have critical task and then non-critical task? Do you map everything out, or is it only the critical task?
There are absolutely critical tasks to keep flow. Again, the point of tact is to really drive completion of one scope at the time they're in that area. And you're not going back, or if you have to go back, you're negotiating with the next trade partner who owns that area. And so what ends up happening is you get like this sense of pride and passion in each area. And any trash in that area is that trade partners, and they're cleaning and they're watching their area, and hey, don't throw stuff in my area, get out of my area. Like, you know from a safety standpoint, it's beautiful. From a cleanliness standpoint, it's great. But yeah, there's always going to be critical activities. We like to keep tact focused. So it's probably a good time to fight the production laws, right? The 4 production laws that I
Hmm.
mentioned earlier. There's a method to fighting them, and that's through buffers, right? So typically we use time buffers, like, right, we put a month at the end of the project and we call it punch list or commissioning or whatever we do. And so
Yeah,
we also usually pad maybe a little bit of time for some trade partners that we know historically underperform. So that's a time buffer. Um, Capacity buffer, right, is having, when we do run into those roadblocks or those stop signs on the job, we've got to have workable backlog, right, that we can take and assign people to.
yeah,
We it might not be critical work right now,
but you
but
can
it's
put it
the
in.
most That's
Yeah,
right.
to get the
And
project moving.
right, and we want to do that with concern for limiting our work in progress, because too much work in progress, I mean, that's creates chaos. And so the capacity buffer is, making sure that we have the resources to apply to backlog work as necessary. And then the inventory buffer is not necessarily like materials that you would expect inventory to be, but inventory meaning, hey, what is that work? Like what have we identified that work so that when we do have the capacity buffers arise, like the resources arise, do they have stuff to go and be productive on? So that's the way that we are able to engage with the production laws and defeat them. Because if you're not using those buffers, if you fight production laws, you will not win, and you'll be tired and frustrated and angry and not understand. And so, yeah, I mean, we've got as an industry to understand those, and that's why I'm becoming more and more of a believer in this tact planning, because it does two things. One, it recognizes all production laws; it forces you to recognize them, and then two, shoot, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, but again,
Yeah, no, it's
anyway, so no,
yeah.
what the other one is, it covers all lean points, and to me, that's, just to repeat them: flow efficiency over resource efficiency, two is visualization, and three is continuous improvement. So, yeah, tact. I feel like tact is the way, and it checks a lot of boxes from my
Hmm.
perspective.
I think we're all hitting YouTube channel later today. No.
I hope so. I'm on a call with Jason and Spencer today at 6, and I get so fired up when I talk to those guys, because they're like going a little bit overboard, and I'm not sure if it's for like the effect or what, but they're Brittany, it would really offend you, but they're making some very negative comments about CPM and current practices, and um, I think we all understand. People have made their living in CPM, and so they're offending a lot of people. And when you offend somebody, they kind of turn you off and they don't listen to you. So I'm trying to encourage them to tone down the rhetoric and make a clear distinction between proper CPM practices and construction, like common practice construction CPM practices, because they're entirely different.
Brittany just left to go to another work meeting, but I think the one room that you were in a while back, she uh, was very. She's been very. She doesn't enjoy the idea of the current model of CPM because it's not exactly doing what it's supposed to do. And so when she found lean construction, it opened up her eyes. So being somebody who came from that world as far as P6 and she can speak to it, I think that it helps. But yeah, I can understand sometimes if you use very strong rhetoric, especially nowadays, people get turned off and don't pay attention anymore.
And that's dangerous with this topic. I'd love to introduce Brittany to Spencer Easton, because he comes from a straight CPM background too, and he has launched a full-on war against the current practices.
So I just want to end on a note here. When I was saying that CPM is harshly criticized because it's never done properly in construction, I was sending a warning to lean construction and lean construction advocates in construction to not make the same mistake that happened in the previous standards of project management, where the standards were not followed. Everybody's saying we are following and they are not. They are doing their thing. Not to happen now again. And lots of people now are using lean as a magic bullet. I'm getting a tool and saying I'm lean, while really they are not. So that's we have to be very careful so that we don't repeat the same mistake, and then the chaotic people in construction win again, which they just want to do whatever they want to do, and it is what it is. And this is what's how construction have been, and this is how we are doing it since forever. And we don't want to improve. Oh, we're using your tool, but that's what we can do.
What you just said, Hussein, reminds me of Nicholas Modig's the fruit example, right, where he calls like operations excellence is fruit. And then when you start talking about an apple, the apple is like concepts and strategies. And then when you break that apple down even more into like a green Granny Smith apple, now you're talking about tools, right? And so if you have a tool or you have a green Granny Smith apple, that doesn't necessarily mean you have all the fruit, right? Like you have a green apple. That doesn't even necessarily mean you have a strategy. Um, if you have apples, like you have 3 or 4 different types of apples, now you're starting to develop this strategy. And then if you have like, you know, an apple, 3 or 4 apples, and maybe 2 or 3 pears, and I don't know, a few different maybe bananas and plantains. Now you have fruit, and now you're lean, right? And so just like breaking that
You
down
are at
really
the
helps.
high level of abstraction, as
Exact. That's the words. Thank you. Nailed it, Hussein.
I like it. So I think you can say we you know, how do you move from doing lean to being lean? That's the yeah, that's what we're talking about, right? That is the that's the how do you do it? And we're
Well,
all
it's
on the
by
journey.
it's by doing it consistently, right? Like
Yeah.
continuing to do it and figure out what works, what doesn't work, and modify that approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really don't want lean to fail. And unfortunately, last project I was in, everybody was advocating this lean project, although it's definitely was not.
From my perspective, all things lean should point at adding value and clarity to our last controllers' lives. It should always make their lives better. And if we're doing something that we call lean that doesn't positively contribute to the craft worker's life, to me, it's not. It shouldn't necessarily be
Yeah,
considered
then
lean.
just don't do it, right? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Why? That's ultimate
Yeah.
values.
Yeah. But that takes it down to communication for the whole team and for the whole project, that everybody needs to have that perspective on it. So that's today's challenge. No. So we're getting close to be ending the 2 hour of talking about how to make good business decisions. I loved all the topics because we went around, but I also think that we looped it back to, you know, we talked about the planning, we talked about behaviors, we talked about information and to be data driven. I think we've been all over, but everything again turned back to making that, you know, how do you make good business decisions. So if there's anybody who has like a closing note, you know, speak up, turn off your microphone, and let's hear it. I would love to hear if there's anybody who has something to say. We're like
For
talked out.
me,
No.
no, for me, Santa, again, and I love the passion, like everybody keeps saying. This is an awesome group. I'm gonna try and plug this into my leader standard work, but to me, it comes down to that pushing the decision to where the information is, and that could be whether that's a constraint in the field or if that's scheduling or planning. And I love how Hussein kind of differentiated between the two because they are entirely different. Um, but regardless of the process or the activity in play, we've got to allow the decisions to be made where the information is had.
Yeah. I'm going to use that sentence a lot from now on.
Please.
Yeah, no, it's good and it's simple, right? It's simple to understand, which is also a key when you want to go out and implement and do the talk and be lean, or being lean, right? Instead of just doing it, but you're being it. So that's
when
great.
you just said that, it dawned on me where it came from. It's a Turn Your Ship Around by David Marquette. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
read that book, but
No.
Yep.
fantastic book, and I'm pretty sure that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Yep, we had David Marquette in our company come and give us a lecture, or let's say, or some, yeah,
Bragger.
or a talk.
I'm
Yeah,
so jealous.
yeah.
Fair. There's a great YouTube video of his out there that explains the whole book.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, he is
awesome. Marcus, we should start a whole list of which books we should read. I think every week we're having this full list of recommendations.
So, because we had a podcast, one of the things I used to do is instead of I read the book, but on top of that, I'd try to bring the author on the show. I think it would be a cool thing to try to see if we can bring some of these authors that we are mentioning onto Clubhouse and just kind of have a conversation and sit around with them, so people can kind of pull their brains. So we can. That seems like a thing I'm going to put on a go to do as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining today. I love the discussion, and I really love the passion. I think from Hussein and from Adam, you could just hear in their voice, right? They were like up talking about it, and it's just that's what actually gives me a vitamin for the day, when I can hear somebody having the same passion, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to look into this. And even though we all know our field, I think it's so great when we get into these kind of rooms and you share your knowledge. And it's together with your peers, that you can still get inspired and you can still learn. That's just my vitamin of the day. So thank you so much. And let's meet next week again.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.